Okay, welcome to Discussions. This is your host, Ian Trottier. Follow me on Twitter. Follow me on Instagram, IanTrottier. Please go to my website, iantrottier.com. On the program today, I have MarkShaw. At the 3 o'clock hour, you can go to my website and I've got it. I'll have it archived and uploaded. John Kiriakou, former CIA agent who blew the whistle on the U.S. policy on torture. He joined me at 3 o'clock for a special edition. I will be back shortly with MarkShaw. He'll be talking about his recent book, The Reporter Who Knew Too Much. The book exposes possible cover-up surrounding the investigative reporting done by What's My Line TV star and media icon Dorothy KilGallen. It's a suspicious death. Why it's important, many reasons, and Mark will share. But most importantly, or to give you an idea of who she was, Ernest Hemingway, apart from her celebrity status on the TV, Ernest Hemingway said this of her: Dorothy was one of the greatest women writers in the world. Mark's written a book about her. We're going to talk about that. You've joined Ian Trottier for the weekly edition of Discussions. This is Wynwood Radio. Okay, I am back. Thanks for tuning in to Discussions. This is Wynwood Radio, and as I promised, I have online author of incredible new book, The Reporter Who Knew Too Much. MarkShaw joins us from California. Mark, are you there?
I am. Thank you.
So, I think most people, and yes, I'm in Miami to answer your question, and I think like most people, the name Dorothy KilGallen I'm not familiar with, and I'm saying most people my age, but the more I look into who she was, and as I shared with listeners, she's not to be taken lightly. And I was thinking about this earlier, Mark. In Miami, we've got Key West, 100, 120 miles to our south. Hemingway spent a lot of his time down there. He also spent a lot of time in Havana. And for local listeners, why Dorothy KilGallen is important, Hemingway said this about her. Dorothy was one of the greatest women writers in the world. That coming from one of the greatest male writers in the world. So tell us a little bit, Mark.
Well, it's interesting with Dorothy. You just mentioned something that I can relate a little bit for your listeners. Dorothy, the New York Post called her the most powerful female voice in America, and you just heard what Hemingway said about her, all of that. She was a media icon, unlike any other in history. She was a journalist for the New York Journal-American in the 50s and 60s. She was on What's My Line, the television show watched by 20 million people. She was this crack investigative reporter who covered the major trials at the time. But to show you the kind of guts she had, back in the 50s and 60s, there was a lot of remarks about Castro and Cuba, and Dorothy actually just traveled right down to Little Havana there. This woman who had no fear.
Wow.
And she wanted to have primary sources when she wrote her column. She walked right into that danger zone at the time and talked to refugees and other people and kind of journalist she was.
Now you've got 20 plus books that you've written.
Yeah. Hard to believe, but yes.
What drove you to write this book?
Yeah. Well, let me tell you something. I never intended to. It's just amazing. This book has taken off. It's become a bestseller. In fact, today is the day when the paperback edition has been released with new material in the back of it that people may enjoy. I've gotten 500 and some emails from people around the world about Dorothy. If you go to Amazon, there's 270 some reviews. It just has taken off, and I would have never expected this to happen because, just like you said, I don't know exactly your age, but a lot of the younger people have no idea who she is, although we have found that many people watch reruns of What's My Line, the game show she was on the Internet and on YouTube and other kinds of places. But this came through a previous book that I had written, two of them. One, you may be familiar, probably not, but there was a very famous lawyer in San Francisco named Melvin Belli, who was the tort lawyer of the 20th century, and best known, though, of course, for representing Jack Ruby, who killed Lee Harvey Oswald. I knew Mr. Belli in the 80s. I'm a former criminal defense lawyer. I practiced law in his building, and so when he died, I wrote a biography of Belli. I then learned about his affection for the mafia, and so the second book, that was called Melvin Belli, King of the Courtroom. Then I wrote The Poisoned Patriarch, which traced back my suspicions that the mafia was involved in JFK's death, and I went back to Joe Kennedy and the '60 election and all these things. But while I was working on Belli, and I was going to quit then. I'd written my 2 books about the JFK assassination. I was going to quit. But Ian, while I was working on the Belli book, I interviewed a friend of his down in San Diego who said to me, well, he knew Dorothy KilGallen. And I said, he did? I was on the show. He said, no, Mark, you don't know anything about her. She was this incredible media icon who was involved in all of these different aspects of her life, these different careers, and all of that. And she knew Mr. Belli from the Jack Ruby trial because she was there. I said, is that right? And he said, too, I should tell you, it's really interesting because when she died, Belli said to me, they've killed Dorothy. Now they'll go after Jack Ruby. And Ian, I'm a curious guy like you are. I couldn't get that quote out of my mind, and that's what triggered writing this book. We'll probably remember or should know that she launched an 18-month investigation into the JFK assassination. She was at the Ruby trial. She exposed Ruby's testimony before the Warren Commission before it was to be released. She was writing a book for Random House that was going to name names and tell who she believed had masterminded the JFK assassination. And just as she was about to complete her investigation, she was found dead in her Manhattan townhouse in a bedroom she never slept in with her makeup, hairpiece, and false eyelashes on, wearing clothes she never wore to bed. And quickly there was the rush to judgment that she had died of an overdose of barbiturates. So I started looking into whether that was true or not, and I got an incredible break that I can tell you about in terms of finding some witnesses, and I've been able in the book to show that she did not die accidentally. She didn't commit suicide, but she actually was murdered because she was the reporter who knew too much.
Whoa. Okay, Mark, that's those are heavy. That's a heavy.
Yeah, this is a guy that that's obviously done some major research here. And folks, he's a former criminal defense attorney and legal analyst for CNN, USA Today, ESPN. Like I mentioned, he's written over 20 books. The trail he's on right now is a big deal. Don't take it lightly by any means. I threw out the name Anthony Sutton, and for me, where I broadcast out of in Miami, he's important